In this video, I'm going to take you through the process of how I created the Corpus Monstrosity and show you how to make your very own custom D&D monster. Yeah! In the previous video, I created a one-page dungeon called the Temple of the Blood Crystal that included a boss monster encounter at the end of the dungeon. So making this monster was a super fun design exercise, and I thought it would be cool to take you through the process and show you my approach to making a completely customized monster. My elbow just popped. So, before I jump over to the computer and start drawing this Corpus Monstrosity, I do want to say that I have made the one-page dungeon, the Temple of the Blood Crystal, available for free, and I'll also have paper miniatures for all the monsters in the dungeon, as well as monster manual sheet for the Corpus Monstrosity, all down in the description below. Free for you to use, download it, print out the miniatures, print out the map. Okay, I'm gonna jump over to the computer, start illustrating this Corpus Monstrosity, and take you through my step-by-step process of creating this boss encounter. Let's go. Okay, real quick, because I do get a lot of questions about this, I do have previous videos about how I create paper miniatures. Right now I am drawing in Photoshop on my Wacom Cintiq Pro 16 tablet. I'm just using the most basic round brush to ink this monster. And if you have any questions about the drawing process, leave me a comment and I'll do my best to explain how I draw things. All right, creating your own customized, completely new Dungeons and Dragons monster. The very first thing I think about before any mechanics or stats or anything is story. Story first every time. And I've come up with these 4 questions. If you can answer these 4 questions, you will be more than halfway done creating your monster. So, question number 1. Why does the monster live or inhabit this place that the players are going to? I guess you need to know a little bit about the place. Are they in a dungeon? Are they in the forest? Are they in the mountains? Are they in a ruined temple that is devoted to a healing goddess? In this case, the Corpus Monstrosity is in this ruined temple because of this corrupting magic that has changed the healing magic in this place to more evil magic, and the monster is the result. Other reasons that a monster could be in a place: 1, it could be just its natural habitat. Maybe your monster is in a place that it doesn't want to be. Maybe it's trapped in a jail cell and is trying to escape, and your players get in the way. There's infinite numbers of reasons, but the good place to start is, why is your monster in the place that your players are going to encounter it? Okay, question 2. What does the monster want from your player? So once the adventuring party arrives to this place and encounters the monster, how is the monster going to react? In the Corpus Monstrosity's case, it wants to feed on the life energy of the players and add more corpses to its body mass thing. Yeah, so it's not a particularly intelligent creature. Its only goal is to feed and grow in size. Okay, question 3 is, what makes this monster unique? How is it different than all of the other monsters in the monster manual? Now, this is kind of a tricky question because there are a ton of monsters in the monster manual. There's tons of other homebrewed monsters out there. There's places like Kobold Press that have books and books and books of additional monsters. So my way of making a monster feel unique is actually a pretty simple one, and it's just to combine ideas. You know, you're taking a couple of ideas from a few different monsters and combining it with a couple of different spells or cool abilities, and then layering on top of that the story that the players are experiencing, something unique to the adventure that you're running, and mash it all together. And while it's things that already exist, combining them is what makes it a unique creature. Once I get into the abilities and stuff of the Corpus Monstrosity, you'll really get to see how I combine a bunch of different things to make a more unique encounter for this monster. Alright, and the fourth question is, what does this creature look like? Or I guess maybe the better question is, how would you as a dungeon master describe this creature? Not just what it looks like, but what does it smell like? What kind of noises does it make? You know, DMing is all about creating cool visuals with your words, and that's what this final question is all about. So the Corpus Monstrosity is just a big jumble of corpses with this corrupted crystal on the inside. I mean, obviously you can see what I'm drawing right now. This is the Corpus Monstrosity. But before I started this drawing, I wrote down what this thing is, and that's going to help inform its abilities. That's going to help inform, how the players react to it, all that stuff. All right. Once the story is figured out, now we get to start working on the mechanics. Okay, quick suggestion. If you are designing a single monster encounter, like a boss fight, go check out Matt Colville's video about action-oriented monsters. A little card's popping up, and I'll have it linked down in the description below. Matt does an amazing job of making really cool encounters, very simple and straightforward. I think he and I really agree that one of the hardest things about pulling a monster out of the monster manual, especially at higher levels, is when it just says this creature has innate spell casting ability, and then it lists like 10 different spells that I'm supposed to somehow keep track of. So I don't mess with any of that. In fact, even if I'm running a monster, like my players are about to encounter a lich who has like a bajillion different spells that they can use, I'm not messing with any of that. I'm writing down specific abilities that this lich uses. Their magic abilities, it's like casting a spell. I just can't keep track of, they have this many first level spells, this many second level, third, fourth, whatever. It's just too much. I have to write down, okay, on turn 1, the lich casts this spell, or if the party does this, the lich will cast this spell, and then write down exactly how the spell or ability works. But just having a list of spells is not good enough for me. So the whole idea of an action-oriented monster is the creature has actions that they take, and not just a big list of spells or abilities that you're supposed to keep track of how and when to use them. It's too much for a DM to keep in their brain. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go through all of the abilities the Corpus Monstrosity has. If you want to follow along, you can download the sort of character sheet for the Corpus Monstrosity in the description below, and it has everything listed out there, exactly like how it would be as a page in the monster manual. Okay, so the Corpus Monstrosity has an action, a bonus action, a reaction, a movement ability, and some legendary actions, which are basically there because this is one big monster and not a group of monsters, so it's a way for the Corpus Monstrosity to have stuff to do on its turn, but then also get to go again in a round of combat. Okay, so its action, really simple. It's got multi-attack. There's arms and legs and appendages sticking out of this thing, so I thought it would be a really cool mechanic that every time it makes an attack, it is swinging with a different weapon. So there was a fighter that fell to the Corpus Monstrosity, got sucked in, and now there's an arm sticking out with a sword, and there was a barbarian that had 2 hand axes, and even a goblin with a spear is sticking out of the monster, so it attacks with all kinds of different weapons. For its bonus action, I thought it would be cool for it to have this sort of like passive ability that, because this is a giant creature that wants to be in melee. It actually wants to be right next to creatures so it can consume them. So its kind of passive ability bonus action is to call the heroes forward. The corrupted blood crystal inside the monstrosity calls out to a nearby player, and they have to make a saving throw, or they take their movement to move closer to the monstrosity. Okay, its reaction is this consume ability. This is the main ability of the Corpus Monstrosity. This is its goal, is to consume more bodies. This is actually a reaction, and one of its legendary actions is to consume. So the reaction works if a player is next to the monstrosity, makes a melee attack that hits the Corpus Monstrosity, kind of like sucks the player in and envelops them. It consumes them into its body and restrains them inside. Alright, I've also given it a movement ability because the monstrosity is going to be moving around this room. It's going to leave a trail of blood wherever it goes, and because this encounter is taking place in just a big circular room, I wanted to make the terrain a little more interactable, and so the monster leaving this trail of blood that is difficult terrain and does acid damage is just a little way to make the place feel a little more dangerous, not just the monster. Okay, legendary actions. This is when the Corpus Monstrosity kind of all starts to make sense design-wise. You know, answering those story questions leads to these kind of abilities and gets me thinking about what kind of encounter this is really supposed to be. I hope I can explain this well enough. Alright, so its first ability is called Blood Burst. The Corpus Monstrosity hides in this pool. So originally I thought of this healing temple as like a fairy fountain kind of place in Zelda. So the main place where people come to get healed is this pool, this fountain in the middle of this big circular room. But the temple has been corrupted, and so now the Corpus Monstrosity lives and hides in this pool of blood. You know, it once was a healing fountain, now it's a pool of blood. So when the players approach the edge of this blood fountain, the Corpus Monstrosity springs out, sprays acidic blood all around, and the fight begins. So this legendary action only happens once at the very beginning of the battle. It's the like roll for initiative. Oh man, what is happening? All this acidic blood just sprayed everywhere. What are we gonna do? There's a huge monster. Ah! It's that kind of thing. Okay, its next ability is called Smother. This is another one of the consume kind of abilities. So let's say the paladin of your party runs up, does a melee attack. The monstrosity uses its reaction to consume the paladin. So now the paladin's inside the monstrosity, but its hunger has not been satiated. Basically, this gives the Corpus Monstrosity a second turn. It moves into another player's space, so it already sucked up the paladin. Now it's gonna move 30 feet and suck up the wizard that's standing in the back. This is my way of, like I said, giving the Corpus Monstrosity a second action to do during a round of combat. Because it's only one monster, I don't want the players being able to gang up on it. It needed to have another way of upping the stakes, and so it gets this sort of second movement and second consume ability in this Smother legendary action. The third legendary action is called Blood Feast. So your paladin has been consumed, your wizard has been consumed. So in the next round of combat, it gets to use this second set of actions to feast on their life force. It does 3d6 necrotic damage, just sucks the life force out of them because they're restrained inside the monstrosity. It also heals the monster as well. So this is the like super dangerous ability. This is the ability that once it happens to one player, the whole battle changes, and the group is going to have to start rethinking how they deal with this creature. They don't want to get consumed because not only does it do damage to them, but it also heals the monster. And now that leads into this next thing. I wanted to give the monstrosity a weakness, and this is all about giving the players a choice. So the paladin and the wizard have been consumed. They're inside the Corpus Monstrosity and they are restrained. So that means that any attacks they make are made with disadvantage. So now it rolls back around to their turn and they have a choice to make. They can either use their action to try and escape the monster, claw their way out of the Corpus Monstrosity, or they can stay inside, keep taking that damage, and try and attack it. They are attacking it with disadvantage, but if they hit, they do double damage. So it's like they get a critical hit, but they have to hit it first, which is the tough part. And the idea behind this is Crystal is kind of living inside the Corpus Monstrosity, and when a player gets sucked in and they attack, they're not just attacking the outside corpses all around, they are, severing the ties of this creature to the crystal that gives it its power. So hopefully that illustrates how all of these mechanics kind of tie back to the story of this creature. Now, I do want to mention that coming up with these mechanics, I was flipping through the monster manual. A lot of them are a reskin of abilities that already exist. The whole consume mechanic is very similar to a gelatinous cube. The blood burst ability when the monstrosity pops out of the pool is basically just the acid splash spell. And the blood feast ability is just like the vampiric touch spell. So really the point is I'm taking the story of the thing and I'm finding pre-existing things to reskin and combine to make something that is more interesting than just the one standalone spell or mechanic from another monster. So here's a good example of that. The Corpus Monstrosity has kind of ruined this healing temple, but people have been coming here and looting the temple and trying to stop the monster. So there's really no good opportunity for treasure. But if your players are going into a dungeon, they expect treasure. So the loot that you get from this monster and from the whole temple are all the past adventurers that have fought the monster and failed. So when the Corpus Monstrosity dies, the crystal that powers it drops to the ground, but also all the weapons of these fallen adventurers that have come before you. So if you decide to use the Corpus Monstrosity, you're going to have to create your own magic items and weapons and stuff that it drops. The way I DM things, I always try to make items that are going to be specific for the players that I'm running for, so things that they're going to want. So if I don't have any players that are interested in using a two-handed battle axe, maybe they still get attacked with it in the fight, but that's just a regular battle axe, and then it drops a cool magic dagger and also a cool long sword that my players are going to be more interested in. Hopefully that's a good example of how to marry story with mechanics, because that's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so we've got all of the Corpus Monstrosity's abilities figured out. It all makes sense with the story. It's a cool encounter. Now I gotta do the thing that I hate doing, and that is trying to figure out the stats of the monster. So in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 274, there's a nice little stat block that shows, a monster of this CR rating should have this much AC, HP, blah, 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 all that stuff. That is a super helpful chart and gives me a basis for how I want to construct the creature. So using that chart and also, again, flipping through the monster manual, looking at some similar creatures to sort of get an idea of what sort of stats this creature needs. So filling out strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, I rarely end up using all of their stat. Like this monster's charisma stat is not gonna matter, I don't think. But what does matter is the creature's strength, because it's going to be making attacks with weapons. And then all the stuff at the top of a monster stat block, the armor class, the hit points, its speed, that stuff super matters. So just design-wise, I thought this thing is going to be super large. It's not armored. It's going to have really low AC. It's going to be very easy to hit this thing, right? But because it's just a single monster, I'm going to give it a bunch of hit points, right? And that also makes sense with the story. It's an amalgamation of bodies, so it has the hit points of all these bodies that make up this creature, right? Which I think is going to make a super fun encounter. You're going to be able to run up and hit this thing, but it's got those cool moves that are going to make you second guess running up and hitting it, and it also has a ton of HP. It's a big damage sponge. The other thing to note are the immunities and resistances and stuff. I thought because this thing was a big, fleshy, gross mass of bodies that, it can take normal damage just like anything else. It's not resistant to fire or anything like that. But because it's got the heads sticking out everywhere, it can't be flanked. It can see 360 degrees. And as far as being affected by different conditions, any physical condition like being petrified or stuff like that can still happen to it because it's a physical creature. I guess with the exception of being knocked prone, because it's a 360 thing, just because I drew it with feet on the bottom doesn't mean there aren't feet sticking out elsewhere, and doesn't mean it can't keep moving around, even if you knock it backwards or something. But all other physical conditions can be applied to this thing. But then because it's not a sentient, it doesn't have a brain, it's just powered by the magic in this corrupted crystal, I thought it can't be charmed and it can't be frightened. So let's talk about the balance of this monster for a minute. So I really hope that you DMs that are looking at this video thinking about using the Corpus Monstrosity and start looking at the numbers that I came up with and are like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me just say, the math in D&D, I so appreciate how balanced this game is, and it's like above my pay grade. I can see how everything works together, but I don't quite understand it. And I think that is reflective of how I came up with the stats for this monster, just comparing it to other monsters in the monster manual. I'm sitting here drawing this thing on the computer. Math is not my strong suit, not the thing I love about D&D. The story is the thing I love, so making the numbers fit the story is what I'm all about. So I know that these numbers probably aren't correct for some of the, I just made all of the DCs 13 because I'm using this abilities system and not actually spells with spell casting ability modifiers and all that stuff is how you determine these numbers. I'm just saying DC 13, and that's not me being lazy. That is me trying to keep things simple. Because this monster has a ton of abilities that it's using, I'm not going to be able to remember, oh, this ability is a DC save 15 and this one's a 13. I'm just making it 13 across the board. One number for me to remember, so when those dice start flying, I can keep track of what's going on. I balance this monster to be like a CR 6 or 7. I'm thinking that it's balanced to go against a party, to be a difficult monster for a party of 4 level 5 players to go against. And even that has a story reason. I made this Temple of the Blood Crystal dungeon to be a place that players could go have one of their allies resurrected. So I thought a level 5 party is a group that doesn't have access to resurrection magic and might not be able to pay for their ally to get resurrected from an NPC or something. So that's why I balance this to a level 5 party. But also I put instructions on how to scale it up or scale it down. Super easy. And I think that is because I'm not so strict about the numbers. All right, I know this is a ton of stuff, ton of information thrown around very quickly, but I hope it's a good example of my approach, which is just using story to inform the mechanics. All of the mechanics and the stats and everything are just carryovers from other monsters that already exist, other spells and stuff. It's just using them to create a story and a feeling and have the encounter be interesting and fun, but also plausible, and it makes sense for this situation in this ruined temple. It all fits together and ends up being a cool encounter, hopefully. And there you have it, the Corpus Monstrosity. All right, that was a lot. I know this process can seem intimidating, but it is so fun to sort of come up with the story, answer those 4 questions at the beginning, and flesh out your monster with fun abilities to make cool encounters for your players. I can't wait to introduce this thing to my players and see how they deal with it. And I can't wait to hear how your players deal with it. If you use it, please let me know. Hit me up on social media. Tell me how your game went. Send me pictures of your miniatures and stuff. Please download the Temple of the Blood Crystal and the miniatures below. I've included the Corpus Monstrosity miniature, the Wraith, the Nothic, the skeletons, and the giant rats, and of course the map of the temple. It's actually a lot of stuff for free. Go check it out. Use it in your games. If you have any questions, hit me with a comment below. I read all the comments and respond. I love talking about this stuff, so the more comments, the better. I really hope this encouraged you to not only try out the Corpus Monstrosity, but also make your own creatures. It's so crazy fun and very rewarding, so give it a shot. I know you can do it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!